dead man. I know you don't want to be involved because I don't know what else to do, all right? I'm your blood cousin, Jimmy. I'm your blood cousin. You know that. Please don't let this happen.
You want a little air on this? Give me some names. There was no way on God's green earth that you can tell me that you did not know the guy who got you into this mess.
I've got no reason to lie. Everybody's got a reason to lie. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Whatever don't kill you, man. I like that.
Did you ever hear of a Little Junior Brown? It looks like Little Junior's moving up in the world.
Cars, drugs, guns. He's buying everything he can get his hands on.
Big Junior. That's one of those expressions like jumbo shrimp.
Oh my, the cars. Yeah, I take them all except that Explorer.
What's the matter with the Explorer?
It's red. Red's my bad luck color. I ain't got nothing to do with red.
Are you a man of honor?
Sure.
24.
If I serve him up,
Jeez, what you been eating?
would you say to me now, you will cut me loose for all time?
Absolutely. Do you want my hand on it or something?
If you take that wow one more time, I'm personally gonna beat you to death.
Maybe the next time you lay a hand on me, it won't be such a one-way beating.
Ronnie, I want you to listen to this. An oldie but goodie. The time has come for everyone to clean up their own backyard.
Hey, the bass is too heavy, yo.
This mother smells scared, Junior.
I didn't do nothing, man. You got something to say?
I will do whatever I have to do to protect me and mine.
Don't push, all right?
It's been a hard week. All I want now is what I had in my life before you and them.
Now is not the time, my man, but I'm gonna see you real soon.
See me now.
Tomorrow, just come by the bar. We should have a conversation about life and stuff.
Hello and welcome to The Complete Works, an in-depth look into the career and filmography of Nicolas Cage. My name is Mike Smith, and joining me on this journey into the depths of true Cagedom is my friend, co-host, and fellow Cageaholic,
Mike DeCriscio.
How you doing today, Mike?
Good. I think this will be a interesting discussion for not Cage in an interesting role, I think.
Wait, what?
I was going to say it'll be an interesting discussion. I was going to say for Cage not being the star, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to give that away so early.
Well, you didn't want to play our hands,
exactly.
so to speak. Cage has been the star in most of the movies we reviewed recently. And in this movie, he's the supporting role. We'll get to that in a little bit. Today, we are discussing Nicolas Cage's role in 1995's Kiss of Death, which is a very loose remake of the 1947 film noir Kiss of Death, directed by Henry Hathaway. Both films give story credit to Elazar Lipsky, who wrote the 100-page manuscript that the original film was based on. I've never seen the remake. I've never seen the original. I've seen the remake now. I've never seen the original noir. Mike, I'm guessing you haven't either?
Yeah, no. I feel like I've heard of it now that, like, when we were moving on to this movie, I feel like I remember hearing about Kiss of Death, but I've never seen it.
Yes, I've never seen it either, and I'm a big noir fan, so I feel like I should check it out at some point. But it just has never crossed my desk. It never appeared. The interns didn't leave it for me or whatever. I don't know.
How dare they?
But it's from all accounts of what I've read researching it for this movie, it seems like it's a very good film. It's gotten very good reviews. It's very well respected. But this movie bears very little resemblance to that original movie. I think it has like a basic story outline, and that's like it. This film, I think, tends to be overlooked in Cage's career. And I think that's because it came out the same year as the movie that won him an Oscar, and the next film we'll be discussing on the podcast, Leaving Las Vegas.
That would make sense.
There's the Oscar-nominated, there's the Oscar-winning movie, and there's the not Oscar-winning movie. Like, what's the movie that people are going to talk about? The Oscar-winning movie. At least for a while. But just because it's overshadowed does not mean that the film is without merit, Mike. I know you were saying, how could this possibly have merit if it's overshadowed by Leaving Las Vegas?
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, you were saying that to me constantly before we watched it. I couldn't, and I kept trying to calm you down. You wouldn't listen. But the film is notable for one big reason. And that reason is none other than David Caruso, who plays the film's protagonist, Jimmy Kilmartin. Caruso is kind of a punchline at this point, thanks to 10 seasons of putting sunglasses on and taking them off on CSI Miami. Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, but back in the day, he was a widely respected actor, earning great critical notice for his role on NYPD Blue. And he left that show just 4 episodes into its second season to pursue a film career, and this is the movie that made him do it. Kiss of Death is the movie that David Caruso quit NYPD Blue to do.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're kind of in film history here, Mike. This is a peek behind the curtain. But despite pretty good reviews, the film disappointed at the box office, and David Caruso's next film, which was William Friedkin's Jade, was a critical and financial disaster. And it pretty much put an end to David Caruso's career as a leading man in film. Right there. Like he made a few movies after that. He was actually he's the lead in Session 9, which is a very good horror movie from 2001. But if you look at his filmography, he hasn't made a movie since 2001. Session 9 was like the last movie he was in.
Wow.
And then he joined CSI Miami in 2002, did that for 10 years, and he hasn't acted in anything since.
Yeah, I think I remember it was the same kind of thing where he left CSI Miami to do, or attempt to do film, and then hasn't done anything.
I believe, and I am not totally up on my history of CSI Miami, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I feel like CSI Miami just ended, or it was canceled, or it became too expensive. I mean, he was on it for 10 years.
That's a good point, yeah.
And I think at this point, I think he's basically retired. Like,
or at least it seems that way.
Can you imagine the amount of money that he has from CSI Miami? Like, you know, he doesn't need to act anymore. He can just kind of chill, relax.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He can put sunglasses on and take them off while relaxing on the beach instead of
as many times as you want. He's earned it.
Yes, but we're not here to talk about David Caruso, Mike. Though I'm sure we'll get to that. But we'll save most of our thoughts for the Caruso cast, which we'll get to by approximately 2029 at the rate we're going.
We'll only review Robinson Crusoe.
Robinson Crusoe. Yes, Robinson Crusoe, all the Robinson Crusoe adaptations or the movies with David Caruso in them.
Exactly.
That's the Caruso cast, and you'll have to look forward to that one day in the future. But today we're here to talk about Nicolas Cage, and boy, what a performance does he give here. Nicolas Cage plays Little Junior Brown, and though he's a supporting actor, he's kind of billed as the film's big star, right? Like, this is 95. He gets his own special credit during the movie's opening. During the opening credits, you know, they list the credits in alphabetical order. But during that segment, I noticed that they skipped Cage, and I was like, "Oh, this is very odd. Why did they skip Cage in the alphabetical order thing?" And then at the very end of that, it said, "And Nicolas Cage as Little Junior Brown." It specified what character he was playing. It gave him the "and" credit, which is like a very important credit.
Yeah.
You know, if you get "and you," like, you're the star. You know, you're the big actor here.
Right.
And if you look at the cast in this movie, that's kind of a big deal. He's the biggest star here in 1995.
Right.
And there's a huge amount of stars in this movie.
Yeah, for a movie that I've never heard of, there's a lot of people in this.
Yeah. So Kiss of Death sees Cage playing an oddball character whose oddness is overt, and yet, I would say kind of understated. Like,
yeah, sort of.
I mean, like, compared to, like, previous oddball Cage characters, I feel like this kind of, like, ranks somewhere in the middle of the weirdness. But I think it really works for it. I think Cage disappears into this role in a way that he very rarely does. You know, I feel like when I'm watching Nicolas Cage, like, I always appreciate his acting, and I always appreciate what he's doing. But most of the time, I know that I'm watching Nicolas Cage. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there are a couple of movies where I truly feel like he embodies the character. One of them is Raising Arizona, where I think he really disappears into that role. I don't feel like I'm watching Cage. I feel like I'm watching H.I. McDonough. And I feel like this is another one. Little Junior Brown feels like his own creation. I mean, it felt like I definitely know it's Cage.
Yeah.
But I felt like he disappeared into the role more effectively than he does in certain other roles, like in his romantic comedies or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. There's an aspect to this character that I couldn't help but imagine. I feel like Cage just showed up one day and was like, "This is what this character is." And I can't remember the name of the movie, which makes me a bad co-host. With his brother, the one he made with his brother.
Oh, Deadfall.
Deadfall, yeah. Where he just showed up and was like, I have this wig. This is what the character looks like.
Yeah.
Or he showed up with the snakeskin jacket.
Yeah, absolutely. The snakeskin jacket in Wild at Heart, the character things in Deadfall, that's something that he does occasionally. And I didn't read anything like that for this movie, but it's definitely possible.
The particular aspect was like the asthma thing for me, where his character, because this character is sort of like a Frankenstein's monster kind of thing, where he's just like flies off the handle in crazy rage, but then in the middle will stop to take a puff on his inhaler and then keep going, and it just seems like that to me. Just in our experience so far, it felt like that was probably a Cage decision.
You think Cage just brought an inhaler to set and was like, "I'm going to do this every once in a while, guys."
Yeah.
That would definitely be interesting. I feel like that was probably in the script. I think it seems to me like this character was written as like this big imposing figure, and it's almost a trope to give these guys one unique quality or weakness to them to make them more of a full-fledged character.
Right.
And so I feel like giving him this one thing, like, oh, he has asthma, is kind of like, it's a little like film noir trope, like a little eccentricity that this character has.
Right. It definitely makes sense, but I'm going to just imagine that.
To imagine that Cage just brought an inhaler at a set and was like, here's what's going on.
Yep.
Now, if you look at the talent that was assembled for this movie, it's almost like a who's who of like who was big in 1995, right? So the film was directed by Barbet Schroeder, who was hot off the success of films like Reversal of Fortune and Single White Female. Schroeder most recently directed a Swedish-French film called Amnesia, and before that, he directed a great episode of Mad Men entitled The Grown-Ups, which is easily recognizable as the one in which the JFK assassination happens.
Whoa.
Great episode of Mad Men right there. And as a side note, Schroeder is occasionally an actor, and he played the President of France in Tim Burton's Mars Attacks.
Speaking of early 90s.
Yeah, exactly. This is like, isn't it the most 90s sentence that you've heard in a while? Kiss of Death was written by Richard Price, who's an author known for novels like The Wanderers and Clockers, and he's a screenwriter known for films like Martin Scorsese's The Color of Money, the film adaptation of Clockers, and the 2000 remake of Shaft. And more recently, he's written for some pretty big TV series like The Wire and The Night Of, which just wrapped up like yesterday.
What?
Or a couple of weeks ago as of this recording, but still, like Night Of just finished. So this guy is still working and stuff, which is pretty cool.
He's still relevant.
Yeah, still relevant. Still attached to some pretty big stuff. And I mean, this cast, like, we already mentioned Cage plays Little Junior Brown, and we mentioned David Caruso, who was hot off his NYPD Blue role, playing Jimmy Kilmartin. But then you've got Samuel L. Jackson in this movie, which is 1 year after Pulp Fiction catapulted him into stardom. And it's also a reunion with Cage after Amos and Andrew. Right. You've got Helen Hunt, who was on Mad About You at the time, and starred with Nicolas Cage in Peggy Sue Got Married. So
it's the whole reunion.
Yeah. You got Ving Rhames, also 1 year after Pulp Fiction and 1 year before Mission Impossible. You got Stanley Tucci, who was in It Could Happen to You with Nicolas Cage. And also continues to play basically the same character, just like in a suit, I guess, instead of a tank top. Like,
yeah, pretty much. He's kind of the same guy.
Kind of just a big slime ball. You got Philip Baker Hall, who's in this movie, Michael Rapaport, Anthony Heald, Ann Mira, and Hope Davis, among several others. The movie's IMDb plot synopsis reads, a reformed convict goes undercover with the help of an angry detective to ensnare a psychotic mobster.
Whoa.
Ooh. So, Mike, what are your overall thoughts on Kiss of Death? Give me your general feelings.
For the most part, I thought it was really good. I had a lot of fun, I guess you could say. Now, knowing it was the noir adaptation, I was expecting a little more noir stuff, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it feels more like a crime drama than like a straight crime drama rather than noir. It's a neo-noir.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
You know, it's a fine line.
Right. Yeah.
But if you, I think it has more in line with something like Goodfellas than it does.
Right.
You know, Kiss of Death. So.
Yeah. The about as noir as it gets is the basic plot, like you said. A man trying to get his life on the straight gets pulled back into the crazy tangling web of crime and stuff.
Right.
Which was fun. It's that kind of thing is interesting and adds tension to a story like this. I thought the performances were all great for the most part.
Yeah, I thought that, everybody in the cast did a very good job. Yeah, I found the movie pretty compelling. I didn't really know what to expect going in, but I was pleasantly surprised. I did think it felt very compressed. Like it felt really rushed. Like it feels like it would have made a great 3-hour Scorsese directed crime epic, right? Like Goodfellas.
100% correct. There's a lot of time feels very weird in this movie where we'll just cut and it's months later, I think.
Yeah, there's literally halfway through. It's 3 years later.
Yeah.
Nothing interesting happened over that 3 year, guys. We could just skip.
Just skip it.
So it kind of rushes through everything over 100 minutes. But the thing is, the actors are so good in their roles, and the individual scenes, the dialogue is really interesting, and it has a weirdness to it. All the dialogue has this oddball quality that I enjoyed. It has a very dry sense of humor, I thought. But then there's stuff like Helen Hunt and Michael Rappaport, I thought were very good in their roles. But it felt like there was a lot more to mine from those characters before they died. Yes, I
totally agree. I felt like that could have been really interesting, that underworld of chop shops and that stuff, but we literally kill it off in 30 minutes into this movie.
And Helen Hunt's death felt really weird to me, too, because it's I found it very shocking when it happened. I was like, "Oh my god!" I was what? It's 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah,
and we just she's it's halfway through her arc. She's not done yet. What do you?
No, we're just starting to get her characterization, and she dies.
And she dies almost immediately. And I found that very affecting. I found interesting, but at the same time, it's something that affects Caruso's character. Helen plays Caruso's wife.
Right.
It affects Caruso immediately. He has the next scene where he finds out about her death, and there's her funeral and stuff. And then it skips ahead to 3 years later, and it's well, all right, Hunt's dead now, whatever. Now he's dating his babysitter, the girl.
Is it his sister or her sister?
I thought it was her sister.
It seems like it is.
I don't think it was, but it might
hope
be.
Not.
That wasn't really clear. I thought it was. I feel the fact that he married her afterwards makes it clear that it's not her sister. But then again, who knows? It could be. It was a very strange thing. Her sister was Catherine Irby from Law & Order: Criminal Intent. That was very weird. That's a very weird thing. And you don't really gain anything from replacing Helen Hunt with Catherine Irby once Catherine Irby's in her role, once she's the wife character.
Yeah, the role of wife is kind of just... They're basically interchangeable because they don't serve the plot in any way, really.
Right.
And it feels... I feel like it's a product of early 90s, where the death of a female character serves only to motivate a male character.
Right. But even then,
all this.
But even then, it only motivates him for 5 minutes, and then it skips
right,
ahead.
and then we skip 3 years. Yeah, it's a very odd choice.
Yeah, which again, that's part of why I feel like this movie should have had more. It could have been longer. It could have been a 3-hour crime epic or something to give more time to Helen Hunt's character, and then her death could have more impact, and then him reconnecting with this other weird could be more interesting, but doesn't play like that. I mean, it almost feels like if they wanted Catherine Irby in the wife role, why didn't they just have her play in the first place? Why even have Helen Hunt in the movie? But still, like I said, the movie has this very dry sense of humor that I really enjoyed. I thought David Caruso is very solid in this movie. And I was looking through the Netflix reviews, which we'll get to later. A lot of people really hate David Caruso.
Really?
Which I think that's residual hate from CSI Miami, because he is kind of a joke from that show. But I thought he was very solid in this movie. But he's constantly overshadowed by actors who are allowed to play flashier and more interesting characters. You've got Nicolas Cage, who's doing awesome. You got Stanley Tucci, who's very charismatic and doing very cool evil slimeball DA business. Right. You got Samuel L. Jackson, who has a really interesting backstory as a detective, and he's got the whole eyeball thing going on. It's an interesting character trait. And you got Ving Rhames, who is just being totally weird. And I guess delivers some really funny dialogue. And it's what can David Caruso do except kind of be there while these other actors are doing? So, which is why it's kind of weird that this was the movie that made him decide this is what's going to make him a movie star.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've kind of been talking. We talked about it, how this cast and the people, the names attached to this were kind of the who's who of 1994-ish, or up and coming, at least. So it seems like this could have been the movie to catapult people, and I think we sort of touched on it, that if this had been, a Martin Scorsese or in the hands of a much more confident or ballsy director, this could be like a crime. With Goodfellas or something like that, it could be up there with those kind of crime movies.
Right.
But it falls just shy of that, and as a result, David Caruso ends up on CSI Miami for 10 years. Although unfortunately he's the only one that kind of comes out of this, or is the only one who doesn't come out of this unscathed. Everyone else in the cast goes on to be big stars.
Yeah, I mean, that's
except
true.
for him.
I mean, to be fair, like, he was in CSI Miami for 10 years. Like, that's a...
I guess we're just bashing that. I don't know.
I guess it depends on what your definition of success is.
Yeah.
I mean...
He only had the starring role in a TV show for 10 years, but...
That's exactly it. Like, also one of the most popular TV shows, airing for those 10 years.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, he wasn't in movies, per se, like those other actors, but, at the same time, like... if you compared David Caruso's career from 2002 to 2012 to Nicolas Cage's career now,
right? In that time period,
who's mostly doing Nicolas Cage is mostly doing direct to DVD stuff now.
Right.
It's apples and oranges.
Yeah. That's a good fair point.
But yeah. Otherwise, what did you think of Cage in this movie? Let's get to Cage.
He is, like I said, a kind of Frankenstein's monster type thing. He has this air of just enough control of not going unhinged on a murderous rampage throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Until it happens, I guess.
Yeah, I really liked him in this movie. I thought he was great in this. He really disappears into the role. He doesn't have the most screen time. At least not like for the first 2/3 of the movie. He's not in that much of it. But when he shows up, he makes a pretty big impression. His facial hair, very on point. I liked the Cage goatee that was going on in this movie.
Correct.
He's also pretty jacked in this movie. He's back in the boy in blue shape.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He's definitely hulked out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Little Junior is just a very odd, eccentric character, which is perfect for Cage. Like this is almost like it's the role that Cage was born to play. Like he is just jumps right into this. One of his first scenes in this movie sees him bench pressing a stripper.
Correct.
And if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, like if you thought I was being metaphorical there, that's a literal.
Yeah.
It opens and you see this woman just kind of going up and down, back and forth, and she's counting 25, 26, and then it pulls back and Cage is lifting her up and down. He does 50 reps or something, and it's bizarre. I think it's a great intro to his character. And it's not the first time we see him. The first time we see him is at the very beginning, where he throws a dude out of a truck, and
that was a pretty crazy scene.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then the next time we see him, he's bench pressing a stripper.
Yeah.
So you kind of get both sides of Cage's character the first two times you see him.
Yeah.
And then there's other stuff when his father dies, he's jumping up and down, crying
in the strip club.
In the strip club, he's just jumping up and down, crying, not unaware of what to do. And then the first person who stops him, he punches right in the face.
And starts yelling, "My dad died yesterday," or something like that. That's bizarre.
Yeah, there's also I also enjoyed the scene. There's a guy who touched one of the strippers, and so Cage, as revenge, makes that guy dance naked with the strippers on stage for revenge.
Yeah.
It gives off a very unhinged vibe to this character, but it's also toned down compared to something that we've seen in other Cage roles. Deadfall is actually, I think his character in Deadfall is a very similar character as somebody who's in the mob.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But if you watch Deadfall and you watch this movie, there's a level of restraint in this movie compared to Deadfall that you do not see in Deadfall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He manages to use his, the eccentricities, the unhinged nature, but he's subdued. He keeps it's the threat of all of that. That's for most of this. Yeah,
the eccentricities feel like they're written into the script this time, as opposed to Cage just fucking around on set.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
is something that we've talked about a lot. You can usually tell when Cage shows up on set and just doesn't have any direction of what he's going to be doing. So you're just well, I'll just do something stupid. And we were talking about Trapped in Paradise last week or 2 weeks ago. And there's a lot of times in the movie where he just has really weird line readings for stuff because there's no direction for that movie. He had no idea what he was doing, so he was I'm just going to say this line weird, and that'll be fun for me at least.
Right.
This movie doesn't really have that. There's not like weird line readings. Everything kind of fits in this character.
Yeah, there's a fairly normal voice, I think.
Yeah, fairly
normal voice. There's no bizarre line readings, like you said. But it's the threat of him going off the handle. That happens a couple of times. Like, we get small glimpses of it, which makes his character very menacing, which it works. It fits with him being the crazy crime boss.
Right.
And then he flies off the handle at one point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And things happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned that this character has asthma. Which is another one, like a little eccentricity this character has. There's also another bit where he tells Caruso in confidence that he can't stand the taste of metal in his mouth.
Right.
Like silverware tastes like poison to him or something. So he has to eat everything with the plastic knife and the plastic fork. And this is like a pretty emotional scene for Cage.
Yeah.
like this is the big emotional catharsis of the movie with this character. And then later on, after Cage has gone to jail and comes back, he's talking to Caruso, and he's like, I couldn't get plastic silverware while I was in jail. Did you tell the cops that I can't stand the taste of metal? And that becomes like the moment of betrayal for Cage and Caruso.
Right.
And it's such like a weird feature in this movie, I feel like. It's such a weird thing to have a character say out loud.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of what makes this character unique in this movie, kind of like interesting on its own. Like it just kind of has like an oddball sensibility that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and I agree with that. That I feel like that revelation that he like hates metal when they're in the car the first time, like when that happens. I feel like I don't know how to put it, but it feels like we're not supposed to think that that's actually. I mean, we're supposed to recognize that for Cage's character, that's like a real moment that he's bonding with him.
Right.
But, I mean, like, earlier in the conversation, he asks Caruso's character if he knows what an acronym is. And then when Caruso doesn't answer, he explains what an acronym is.
Yes. And then he explains his own acronym, which is BAD. I think Balls, Attitude, Direction is the...
I think that's what it is.
I believe that's what it is, which is ridiculous and silly, but he plays it so seriously.
Right. Yeah, he's... a character that has, the sensibilities of a child, I guess, but is this imposing person in charge of a crime world.
Yes, and that kind of makes him scary in its own way. I also really love when he's bonding with Caruso. Like they get dropped off at the strip club, and Cage is about to drive away, and it's like, hey, you're not working tomorrow. You should come down and have a beer. We should have a conversation about life and shit. Like, that was just a great line. That was really.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that. So how do you think this role fits in with the roles that we've seen Cage play so far? And this is our 25th movie that we've talked about on this podcast, Mike.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
For the most part, it seems pretty standard in some weird way that I'm not surprised this is Cage's character. Although, as we've said, we're ramping up to leading man Cage, and the last couple movies have been that.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing to see him in like what could amount to a cameo in some weird way. I mean, there's more to it.
It's a pretty significant supporting role.
It is,
and he's not the highest billed in the movie, but he gets the special credit. He's the star.
That's true.
As far as how this fits in, I feel like it is a toned down version of his character from Deadfall, Eddie, with kind of a mix of his criminal character from Amos and Andrew thrown in there.
Yeah.
And it's also another neo-noir film. Which Deadfall was a neo-noir, and Red Rock West was also neo-noir. So I feel like Cage was kind of drawn to those in the early 90s, it seems like, when he wasn't making studio comedies.
That's a very good point. He seems to be drawn towards those reformed criminal or type characters that we'll see more of.
Yeah. Did you think this was a reformed criminal? Because he didn't seem reformed.
Well, not reformed at all. I guess that's a good point. I was mostly thinking of Con Air.
Fair enough. And we'll get to that pretty soon. I'm pretty psyched. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but Leaving Las Vegas is next, and then it's the triple crown of Cage action movies.
Yes.
All in a row. The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. Like,
it's going to be the best.
It's going to be a pretty great couple of weeks, so stick around for those. Now, were there any moments or scenes in this movie that stood out to you, Mike?
Well, we talked about the Cage jumping up and down in the strip club after his father dies.
Yeah, that was silly.
That was the one that stuck with me the most. Also, the scene where they apparently beat Michael Rappaport's character into a mush.
That's the one I was thinking of too. Yeah, I guess Michael Rappaport plays a character named Ronnie, who kind of fits the Chris Tucker and Jackie Brown role. You know,
right.
Just the really annoying low-level criminal guy who you can't wait to see die.
Who thinks he's way above what he is.
Yep. And so Cage beats Ronnie to death with his bare hands, and the scene is set to Jump Around by House of Pain.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, because I was like watching it, and I am a big fan of that song, so like the opening started, and it's like, wah!
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, now that I think about it, though, that scene kind of concludes the Helen Hunt arc in some way, where...
It does. And the whole thing with Ronnie, like, Ronnie and Helen Hunt just felt very weird. Like, it felt very telegraphed from the get-go that Ronnie was really into Crusoe's wife. And so it was just... And, like, he basically, like, drives her back into alcoholism, which we only get, like, a brief hint that she was a reformed alcoholic.
Right.
And then it's weird because she's at the garage and he offers her a beer and she's like, oh no, I don't drink. And he's like, oh yeah, but you used to. And and then she sees Rappaport and his gang beat up some dude.
Right.
And then she drinks, I guess, after that. And
I think we're led to believe she does, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, that just seemed weird. Like, I feel like we didn't get enough of that character to justify that decision, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then right after that, Rappaport takes her to a bar, and she's drinking there. And then she wakes up in his house. And I guess it's implied that she's been either blackout drunk or was drugged or something.
Yeah. And then, shady things happened, at least.
Yeah. And then she is still kind of in a stupor, and then leaves the house, tries to drive away, and gets hit by a truck.
Right. And then... Caruso finds out, and I think he stages that where he tells the police what happened. You know, he becomes an informant in a way to make it look like Ronnie does, so that he gets killed, I think.
Yeah, I think that's basically the plan.
Yeah.
And so, Cage kills Ronnie, and it's a great scene. I think it's probably my favorite scene of the movie. It's very good. Also, the scene where Cage kills Ving Rhames is very shocking and effective.
Yeah.
I thought, because Ving Rhames, I mean, he was in one scene before this, and then he was in this one. Made a big impression when he showed up. Like, he made this big deal about how, he can't have a red car. Like, red is his unlucky color, so even if the car has been painted over with something else, he'll know that it's still a red car. And, like, it's like, funny dialogue, and it, like, sets him up as an interesting character right away. And then, you think he's going to be, like, a pretty big part of the movie, because he's been built up by the FBI or the police that Caruso's working with. Like, you got to take down Omar. You got to take him down. Get him. You get to him. You get to Cage, and then Caruso is talking to Ving Rhames, and Cage just shoots Ving Rhames like out of nowhere. Yeah. And it turns out that Ving Rhames was actually an undercover FBI agent, and that like dives into the whole police corruption in this whole thing. I think the movie did a pretty good job of showcasing the incompetency of government bureaucracy. I'm trying to say a lot of big words at once, and it's not working. But you know what I mean, like, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty effective. Like the scene where Caruso shows up and the FBI is arguing with the cops, and it's like, you should have told us that you were investigating this, and they were like, you should have told us he was an undercover agent.
Right.
I thought that was pretty entertaining and interesting.
Yeah, and it manages to navigate that whole system with the FBI and the police department and then the lawyers and then all that stuff. It handles all that very well and in a not confusing way. In a not confusing way. That plot actually sort of goes somewhere and is relevant instead of just being like, hey, let's add complication, which could have happened in a lesser movie,
Exactly, yeah. And also this features Stanley Tucci in full slam ball mode, like it could happen to you.
Exactly.
And he was very good in this movie. Like, he plays a very effective slam ball, who is kind of the embodiment of everything that's wrong with the justice system.
Right.
As it is in this movie, and he basically lets Cage walk. Like, they capture Cage on the account of Ving Rhames' death, and then he lets him walk in exchange for a judgeship. Like, he's going to be appointed to be a judge. And then Caruso doesn't like this one bit, so he gets the job done himself. What did you think of the ending of this movie, Mike? I kind of thought it wrapped things up a little too neatly.
I wasn't exactly sure what happened in some weird, I know Caruso had recorded that conversation where Stanley Tucci admits that he let Cage walk to get so he could become a judge, and it's like threatens to go to the press, but then he just kind of like walks away and gets in his car, and like the movie ends.
Right. Yeah. A lot of this movie is just about David Caruso wearing a wire.
Yeah.
Because that's like the big thing about the climax is like I wore a wire this whole conversation, so you can get Cage on all this stuff. He wears a wire. Like there's a plot point where he's talking to Cage right from the beginning. He first puts on the wire, and then he like rushes to the bathroom and takes off the wire and throws it out the window, and Cage like pats him down right afterwards. Right. Which was pretty effective. That Richard Price, man. He's always writing about The Wire.
I was just going to say, what a coincidence that guy went on to write The Wire.
But yeah, I did think the ending wrapped things up a little too neatly, but it kind of got the job done. I felt like it was kind of satisfying. What'd you think of Samuel L. Jackson's arc in this movie? I mean, he's a detective who is in the opening shootout, gets shot in the face, and gets like the scar, and then his kind of thing is that he takes on Caruso's case and becomes his handler during the whole investigation. And you get like a lot of background about his character. You get the fact that he involuntarily cries
out of that one eye, out
of that one eye, which I thought was pretty effective. Like he's talking about it, and then just out of nowhere, like a single tear rolled down his face. Again, just like another like little eccentricity in this movie that like I think kind of puts it above the average. Crime drama. That
definitely fit the noir style, kind of menacing character like we were talking about. I feel like his character's weird tick is much more effective than Cage's asthma. You know what I mean? But it's the same thing, where it's a character with the weird physical tick thing. But I thought it was really cool. It added a lot. It kind of humanized his character in some weird way,
right?
Where he, for the most part, seems to be this unflinching detective willing to sacrifice Caruso for anything, but in the end, it ends up they have some weird police criminal bond that they want to take down the corruption.
At the very end of the movie, Caruso's walking away, and you see Sam Jackson on the steps, and Sam Jackson gives him like the little like fist bump of approval.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But I thought he did a great job as he always does for the most part.
Yeah, that was very good. I also appreciated during the climax. That the guy that Cage made dance with the strippers was there, and during a moment of need for Caruso, the guy kicks the gun over to Caruso to try to help him out. I thought that was like a nice little touch, like because of course he would want Cage to lose.
Right. It made me. I didn't remember it. I probably should have just gone back to watch. But did Caruso save that guy? Because originally he was going to burn his hand with a cigarette, right? Or was that just a threat?
I believe what happened is he had the guy put his hand down on the table. He started lighting a cigarette, and it made you think he was going to burn his hand with a cigarette. And, and then it was like a smash cut to that guy dancing naked on the stage.
Okay.
And so it was mostly meant as a joke, but I liked that this kind of joke character showed up to help out Caruso in a moment of need, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. I did notice that also.
Yeah,
it was great.
That was pretty neat. Is there anything else in this movie you want to talk about, Mike?
Not particularly. I think we touched most things. We covered all of it. It's a good movie. It's worth checking out, especially as a kind of weird sleeper hit, or not even hit, I guess.
Yeah, it was a pretty big disappointment at the box office. I think it had a budget of $40 million, and it made like 14 or something like that. Like it didn't do well. And again, this was supposed to be Caruso's big movie star role.
This was the one.
It didn't work. And again, I feel like if he had chosen something that showcased his acting talents a little bit more, because he's solid in this movie, but he's overshadowed by so many other people.
I think that's a good point too. Yeah, what I was originally going to say when we had talked about that was I feel like he's kind of delegated to the role of being audience surrogate for the most part.
Yes,
the straight normal guy thrown into all these eccentric characters, but unfortunately, all those eccentric characters end up being way more interesting than him.
Yeah, so absolutely. That's the danger. That's the danger of being the audience surrogate. Is you're going to get overshadowed.
Unfortunate for him, I guess.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. It's a very solid crime drama. Has a lot of really eccentric characters that are really fun to watch. And also, it's just pretty quotable. There's a lot of quotable lines, especially from Cage, that are really enjoyable. All right, Mike, let's get into some Netflix reviews for Kiss of Death. Let's do that.
Let's do it.
All right, here's a 2-star review of Kiss of Death. I'm going to precede this by saying most of these reviews really hate David Caruso. and it's really weird. And again, I think I mentioned it before, but it's definitely, I feel like residual effects from CSI Miami. People just don't like that show because it's kind of a joke. But all right, here's the 2-star review of Kiss of Death. It amazes me to think that so many otherwise decent actors were just used as scene-setting exposition to prop up David Caruso's sub-mediocre screen presence and lack of acting skills. Truly, I am astonished by this. Where is he now? This movie should have been the kiss of death for his career.
Wow. That's pretty scathing.
Yeah, right? That's not even the worst one. Here's a 3-star review of Kiss of Death. Probably Nick Cage's second best role right after Raising Arizona. How did he get so big? Probably Mike Rappaport's most scumbag role. He didn't answer his own question. Probably Mike Rappaport's most scumbag role. He's such a POS, it's hard to watch. David Caruso, he can go jump in a lake. He tries too hard to look like a badass with his cheesy sneer and tough guy talk. He was exactly the same lame-ass character in King of New York.
Wow.
Yeah, he can go jump in a lake.
I'm really hoping there's one of these is at least somebody complaining about the language. If it's not, I'll be disappointed.
I don't think there is.
You let me down, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That would have been awesome, because there's a couple, like Guarding Tess and Trapped in Paradise, where it's like, the language in this movie is ridiculous. Yeah. All right, here's a 2-star review of Kiss of Death. It's kind of a long one. This is a movie to watch if you have some time to kill and plan to go brain dead afterwards. Seriously, there are aspects of this movie that does not make sense at all. An example, you ask? Trying to avoid spoilers here in case you really, really want to see it, Nicolas Cage plays the bad dude in this film and is introduced as somewhat a fitness buff. He bench presses a stripper, and we see him doing jumping jacks, not to mention later marathon punching a dude. Then, about halfway in the movie, it's revealed he struggles with asthma and carries an inhaler around. Fine, whatever, it shows weakness in a bad dude character. But then in a fight scene later, he can't throw 2 punches without needing the inhaler. Samuel Jackson's character had really no point in this film. He begins in this movie by getting injured and takes the injustice out on David Caruso's character. He doesn't like David Caruso's character until suddenly he does, and we're not shown why or where this switch happens. I know Caruso from CSI Miami and his famous taking the sunglasses off thing. Needless to say, the biggest disappointment of this movie is that he doesn't do that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that is kind of disappointing that he doesn't do the taking the sunglasses on and putting them back off then. But This was also 7 years before CSI Miami happened, so...
Right. I mean, to be fair, my first note was during the credits and David Caruso's name showed up, and I wrote, if David Caruso doesn't at least make one pun before putting on sunglasses, I'll be disappointed. And he doesn't do it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, here's a 1-star review of Kiss of Death. It's funny how David Caruso tried to do movies.
I hope that's the whole thing.
It's not. This is a really weird one, actually. It's funny how David Caruso tried to do movies. He can barely do CSI, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, SVU, Criminal Intent, NCIS, Law & Order, Indy, St. Louis, Columbus, or whichever show he is on, but it's bad. Really bad. I love Nick Cage, but if David is starring in this, then holy effing shit, this is going to be the worst piece of garbage since Benjamin Button.
What?
Couple of things there. First of all, very weird reference to Benjamin Button. Like,
of course.
Like, out of nowhere, slam on Benjamin Button. Also...
Hot take.
Also, Benjamin Button came out 13 years after Kiss of Death.
Yeah.
So, if anything, Benjamin Button is the worst piece of garbage since Kiss of Death. And also, he says this is going to be the worst piece of garbage, meaning he hasn't watched the movie. He's just basing this on David Caruso being in the movie.
Wow. That's impressive. Good for that guy.
Yeah. He has his priorities in order. Also, He has no idea what show David Caruso's on.
I do like that slam, though. That was pretty good.
CSI, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, SVU, Criminal Intent, NCIS, Law & Order, Indy, St. Louis, Columbus. I like Columbus. Columbus is a good ending city. There should be a CSI Columbus. All right, here's a 4-star review of Kiss of Death. Also a weird one. Note to Rupert Grint. David Caruso was incredibly sexy in NYPD Blue. Why does Hollywood not like ginger-haired leading men? Make sure your agent sends you all the same roles as Orlando Bloom and Rupert Friends. Learn the lesson of David Caruso and go out and get your Oscar. David Caruso comes out ahead of Nicolas Cage in the story and in acting, in my opinion. End the stigma. If Barack Obama did it, you can too.
What?
I know, right?
This guy is definitely high. There's no other way. That makes sense.
I mean, like, it's like I hope Rupert Grint got the note. You know, I feel like, you know, I don't know what he's like. Learn the lesson of David Caruso and go out and get your Oscar. David Caruso does not have an Oscar.
Yeah,
He is the furthest thing from an Oscar. Whatever the opposite of an Oscar is, that's what David Caruso has.
I guess it's not an Oscar then.
Yeah, I guess. Also, if Barack Obama did it, you can too. What? What? Barack Obama doesn't have an Oscar. Barack Obama isn't the star of movies.
Not yet.
Not yet. He's going to pull a Schwarzenegger.
I can't wait.
Come November. Once he's out, he's ready. All right.
Yep.
Here's a 2-star review of Kiss of Death. Can David Caruso suck any more than he did in this movie? And the dialogue, ugh. I give an extra star only because there's strippers in it.
What the Oh my god.
This is a man who knows what he wants.
That's right.
And finally...
They've got a code to live by.
Yeah. And finally, here's a 4-star review that should sound a little familiar. This is Nicolas Cage doing what he does best, and that's making great movies. Check it out for yourself. Yeah, that's...
Is that just copy-pasted on all of his movies?
This is the third one I think we found. Third or fourth one.
Yeah.
And I don't go through all the Netflix reviews. I usually just find whatever ones I find funny and take them in. Luckily, I went a little further back this time, and I found this one. But, yeah, this was like on Guarding Test, and it was on a couple other ones. Like,
yeah.
Some guy just went through most of Cage's movies and said, this is what he's doing best, and that's making great movies.
Good for that person.
So I'm glad that guy has some free time on his hands to do that. But yeah, so my final thoughts on Kiss of Death.
We've kind of talked about it. It's worth checking out if you want to see some weird early 90s crime drama stuff. It is surprisingly good, considering that, you know, it's lost to the sands of time, it would seem.
Yeah. I liked it a lot. It's pretty solid. It is shorter than I think it should be. It definitely feels very rushed. But Cage is great in it, and the rest of the cast is really good too. There's a lot of really good stuff to recommend in this movie. And as an interesting relic of 1995, being the movie that caused Caruso to leave NYPD Blue to pursue a movie career, it's an interesting one. Yeah. All right, Mike, so where can we find you online this week?
You can find me at twitter.com/mdfilmblog. And if you like Dungeons & Dragons, my friends and I stream our game, post our game at youtube.com/geonerd79.
All right, and you can find me online at twitter.com/msmithfilmblog and all my podcasts and stuff at filmbook.com. Thank you so much for listening to The Complete Works. I'm Mike Smith. That's Mike DeCriscio. If you're listening to this review via our podcast on iTunes, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, take a moment to give us a review. Help support this podcast and FilmBook by taking part in our Patreon campaign. You can find our Patreon campaign page at patreon.com/filmbook. Any feedback, compliments, topic discussions, and even hate mail can be sent directly to podcast@filmbook.com. Please list the podcast you're emailing about in the title of your email because we produce so many different ones hard to keep track. We would love to hear from you. Join us next week where we'll be discussing the movie that won Nicolas Cage an Oscar. That's right, it is time to talk Leaving Las Vegas, which looks pretty cool, and will reunite Cage with... I am just realizing that I didn't update the thing that I was supposed to read. So I was reuniting Cage with Samuel L. Jackson, his Amos and Andrew co-star.
Wrong.
But Leaving Las Vegas I've never seen, and I've heard very good things about, so I'm looking forward
I've
to
never
that.
seen it either.
So that should be good. And it's the one that won Nicolas Cage an Oscar. It's the reason we're doing this podcast, Mike.
Yeah,
right?
Just for this one movie.
Yeah, it's a big celebration of Cage. So that's very cool. We've changed the schedule up a little bit. So next week we're going to do a Complete Works with Leaving Las Vegas. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to do a Film Bookcast where we're going to be discussing Blair Witch. Probably. Right, Mike? Is that the idea?
Most likely. I think that was the only one worth seeing that week.
Yeah, I mean, we could have done our usual and do a Film Bookcast this week and Complete Works next week. But the only movie coming out this week is really Sully, which I actually heard very good things about. Which was surprising to me, but I think it's probably in both of our best interests. Like, we're just probably going to do Blair Witch, right?
We'll just skip it, yeah.
I mean, I'll probably end up seeing Sully. I'll talk about it if I do end up seeing it, but, we'll see what happens. But Blair Witch I'm very excited about. I'm hearing very good things. So, that's
the more you know.
Yeah. Have you seen anything about Blair Witch? Have you seen the trailer?
No, I'm trying. I mean, not trying to avoid it, but I haven't seen it anywhere. So.
Oh, cool! You didn't even see it like in front of Don't Breathe.
Did I see it there? I don't remember.
Oh,
actually, yeah, I did. No, I did see it in front of Don't Breathe.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it looks pretty cool. I mean, again, I'm not a fan of the Blair Witch Project, and I know you're not a fan of found footage movies.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, yeah, because I don't remember if we talked about it on the last Film Bookcast, but I talked about how I think now that handheld cameras are actually like almost the same quality as regular cameras.
Right.
They're not shitty like VHS,
Yeah.
I think I might have a better reaction to it in this one.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, but you're not a fan of found footage. I'm not a fan of Blair Witch Project, but I am a fan of Adam Wingard, the director of this movie, who directed You're Next and The Guest, both of which are amazing.
Right.
So I'm pretty stoked for this, and the fact that this is like, this is under wraps, like nobody knew it was a Blair Witch movie until about 2 months ago.
Right.
Is pretty cool.
That's some exciting stuff I hope pays off for them, and I think it will.
Hopefully. It works for 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Right.
So who's to say it won't work here? And I think Blair Witch is a bigger name than Cloverfield is. Actually, it's weird now that I think about it, that the 2 surprise movie sequels that came out this year were sequels to the found footage movies that kind of influenced the entire genre.
That's a good point.
That's super weird. Well, what do you know about that? All right.
Something to think about.
Yeah, a little head nugget as you wander down the road of life. All right, that's stupid. All right,
that was good. That was a good try.
That was good. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to The Complete Works, and thanks for getting in the cage.
Pack it up, pack it in, let me begin. I came to win, battle me, that's a sin. I won't ever slack up.